So just to talk about my process for seasoning a pan, and it varies, it even varies from what's printed on the instructions here. The recommendation from the manufacturer is that you can clean it. You have to clean it under hot water using some soap and detergent to remove all the protective coating, and then you're gonna saute potato skins in the pan. That will work, but that's gonna take a little bit more time, and you have to do that, from what I've found, frequently in order to establish that first level of season so that you can get the non-stick. And what I'm gonna show you is more of an accelerated method to ensure an evenness in your seasoning throughout. Now, the seasoning isn't permanent, okay? So that's one thing you guys gotta to know about this is you'll have to re-season over time, and depending on what you cook in here, might dictate the necessity for re-season at that point. So if you're cooking anything that's heavy in acid, let's say like tomatoes or tomato-based sauce or something of that, you will notice that the seasoning potentially can strip away in spots, and you'll have to re-season. Let's talk about that first step. The first step is cleaning the pan. Okay, and there's a few methods that you can use to clean the pan. Some people will even go to the extent of using sandpaper to remove that protective coating. It is thick, if you guys can see here. There's some of the spawning of that season or that protective coating. It's almost like a glue that goes around, keeps it from rusting on the shelves and keeps it from rusting when they ship them out. So we have to remove that, and again, that's the first step. So a few methods that I'm gonna try, or that I've tried in the past, I actually will boil water in the pan itself, and then I'll use a salt scrub. So I'll clean it with a detergent and soap and water first, just to remove any kind of physical debris or particles in that. And then I'll boil water in here with salt, and then I'm gonna use a potato as my scrubbing method in order to sort of clean away as much of the protective coating as I can. And I'll do a little bit of that on the back. I won't be as focused on cleaning the protective coating on the back because I'm not trying to apply seasoning for non-stick here. When I'm trying to apply seasoning for non-stick here, that's where I'm gonna spend most of my focus on. And I'll also focus on seasoning the handle as well, just to make sure that you're controlling rust. You've always got to control for rust, and you got to maintain that non-stick surface. After you wash it and clean it, you apply a very thin layer of oil in the pan, and then we're gonna put it in the oven. We're gonna bring it up to 200 degrees, and then we're gonna take it out, and we're going to reapply a level of oil, very thin coat with a paper towel or so, and then we're gonna put it back in the oven and bring it up to 400 degrees for 2 hours, okay? And then we're gonna turn it off, and we're gonna leave it in there for 2 hours. And that's going to help the oils, as they turn into more of a polymer, bond sufficiently with the metal, filling in those pits and holes on the surface, okay? And then after we get or establish that first level of seasoning, the next thing I do is I'm going to deep fry in it. So I'll fill it up halfway, typically with oil, and then I'll fry something in it. And that usually will help me to establish a really good bond with my seasoning, so that I get that gliding egg effect whenever I'm cooking with it, without having to put a ton of oil in it, okay? The thing that you need to know about these pans is, as you're using them, you never wash them with soap and water after you've seasoned it, okay? Soap and water is a good way to get rid of the seasoning. So you essentially could, and then you'll just have to re-season. I would use the oil and the baking method in order to reestablish that first level. So you can do that as much as you want, but because they're non-stick, typically you can wipe them out with a cloth or with a paper towel, and then just reapply some oil. And for me, I leave them on the stove, or I put them in the oven so that they maintain a certain level of dryness. they're away from moisture, and that way they won't rust, and they'll maintain their seasoning so that nothing's scratching them or damaging that seasoning surface. My wife made the mistake of washing them one time with water, and she didn't dry them out, and so they ended up getting rust in there, and I had to do the whole re-season and re-clean process. So I had to start all the way from scratch to get it where I needed it. You can wash them. I'm not saying you can't. I'm saying you typically don't want to, you don't need to, but let's say you get something in there that you really need to wash out, okay? Maybe like fish or something. When you wash it, if you use water and you do use soap, be aware that you may have to re-season, but you need to dry this so that there is no moisture left in, okay? So after you wash it, you'll dry it with a towel, and the best thing to do after that is to put it on a burner and bring it up to temperature so that any kind of moisture will evaporate from both sides. So that's a good tip to remember if you ever have to wash your pans, to bring them back up to temperature by putting them on a burner and then applying a light coat of oil, so you're sort of re-seasoning them after that wash. Here are the two pans after I've gone through and seasoned them. Let's talk about the 9.5 inch. So immediately after I seasoned it, the first thing I did was to test the seasoning, and I was cooking an egg in it just to see if the first seasoning, you know, how that performed. It wasn't that well, so when I went to use a rag on it, I had some tongs because it was hot, and I accidentally scratched into it. That's no problem because the seasoning just reapplied through there. I didn't scratch the surface of the pan, and basically I scratched through that first level of seasoning, and now I still have a second level of seasoning through it, but it's even, and you'll see that eggs do slide in through this. As you continue to use it, it's gonna get darker and darker. That's the black steel. So as you continue to use it, you'll see an improvement over time in terms of the seasoning and just the darkening of the seasoning. So this is that first level. Now, what I want to talk about right now is this pan, the 11 7/8 or the 12 inch. If you notice, I've got sort of a ripple here, a little lighter colored segment here, and that happens sometimes. So, you know, don't think that just because you've got, you know, maybe a discoloration or you've got a great seasoning here and what might not look like a great seasoning here, there is still, as you can see through the color, there's still a layer of seasoning here. And it performs just the same. So, you know, what happens is as you're using your pan, sometimes bits and pieces and sections of seasoning will remove themselves and others may stick, but just reapply a seasoning and you'll be fine on that. This pan is still non-stick. Mine are cleaned out, so they're a little bit dry. I keep them a little bit more wet than this, and that means with oil. I keep them oiled so that they sit with a thick coat or a nice thicker coat of oil than this in the pan. And I use them daily. So if you're not gonna be cooking daily, you still wanna have a nice thin coat of oil, but if you're gonna be cooking daily, it's not going to go rancid or anything like that because you're using them. Now, don't worry about this. Again, this little section here is still seasoned. It's still non-stick. Cooked some eggs in it this morning, worked perfect. This is just gonna improve over time as you deep fry. And again, these seasonings will, you know, over time, depending on if you're using metal or if you're using plastic or silicone or whatever it is that you're using, these will eventually scratch out sometimes, and it's okay. As long as you know how to reapply season. So, you know, like I said, I don't focus so much on the bottoms of the pan, but they do begin to season themselves. I do put a little coat of oil before I put them in the oven. These actually went through 2 rounds in the oven. So be prepared. It's not a quick process for seasoning a pan, but it is a rewarding process when you take the time to do it. And don't expect it to be perfect every single time. As you can see, I went through the same process. This pan, the smaller pans I find season more consistently versus the larger pans. Even my 12-inch or my 13-inch actually has a little bit of this, so it's okay. Few tips when you're seasoning them in the oven. So as you put them in the oven for 400, put them as close to the heat source as possible. That gives me a more consistent result. So I've got a gas stove and the burners are on the bottom, so I put these on the bottom rack. If you've got an electric stove and the heating element is at the top, you might put it there. Don't put it on broil because you're not controlling the temperature there, but put it in your oven. And again, if you don't have an oven thermometer that's reliable or accurate, I recommend getting one of those, but you want to put them in at 400 because the smoke point of oil is around 400 or so. 425 is the flash point for some, so you don't want to start a fire, but you want to make sure that you're changing the but you're changing the structure of the oil to a polymer that sort of bonds to this metal. Again, and always as you deep fry, if you deep fry in these, I always recommend deep frying in them. Just fry up some potatoes or something like that. You're gonna recognize that that's gonna help promote a good season adhesion, okay? So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. This has been a lot of fun. If you guys have any questions about these, feel free to comment below. I want you guys to know that I really enjoy using these pans to cook with because of the results I get. It can be frustrating to use a black steel or a carbon style pan, even a cast iron skillet if it's not seasoned properly. So once you get a good season on it, these pans are basically good to go. I don't need to wash them with soap and water. All I need to do is wipe them out, apply a thin coat of oil before my next use, and for me, my black steel pans stay on my stove because that's how much I cook, especially with them. Again, these are the Matfer black steel pans. I really love these pans. I love Matfer and what they do. They've been in business for over 200 years and they're family-owned business, so you've got to support that. But you know, these aren't very expensive. I think, you know, they go around $30 or $40 a pan, and for the results that you get, and even if it's your first time trying to season a pan or to use a black steel, get yourself a 10-inch. You know, this is a perfect pan for cooking eggs. My wife, who doesn't have a lot of experience cooking, this is the pan that I give her to use for making eggs, and she just scrambles up or beats up a couple eggs, throws them in here. It's non-stick. She doesn't have to do any kind of scrubbing. She just wipes it out, puts some oil, leaves it there, and then it's ready for use whenever. These are, for me, some of the most convenient pans to use. Better than stainless steel. They hold the heat so good. Now, the one thing I would not make in these pans is probably a soft scramble where you start with a cold pan and then start to cook up. So anything where you start with a cold pan and start to cook into it, that's not gonna produce that great of a result. These pans need to be heated up. So preheat them, they get really, really hot. Throw your butter or a little oil in there before you start to pan sear, and then let it do its magic. It's gonna put a great crust on steaks, on fish, on chicken, you name it. These pans are gonna do a great job cooking that. And then for me, they cook fried eggs the best. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you have any questions, again, leave them in the comments below, and we'll see you in the next one.